Alright, so let's continue where we left off in part 1. If you skip that one, we didn't do a lot yet. We just prepared the track and made a box that we put in the subnet and make it follow the curve. So that's about it. Took me 10 minutes, but still. Okay, let's continue. So I'm going to show you a problem that I'm going to run into when I use this setup. So this box, when it animates over the curve, so let's say it's over here. If I want to make my box, if this is my train, my cabin of my train, for example, if I want to change the size of the box, I can make it a little bit less high, for example, 40 centimeters, something like this, a little bit less wide with this. But if I want to make it longer, let's say 4 meters, something like that, you see that we already run into a problem here in the corners, because if I'm going to put this on wireframe with the W, you see that the origin, so the center of my box, is actually still on the curve, but the outsides here are getting a little bit off of the box. And if we're going to put wheels on this box, if this were a train, those wheels are never going to be able to stay on the rails, if you see what I mean. So what I want to do now is make a different setup where instead of animating a box over this curve, I'm going to animate not a box but a line. And this line that I'm going to do the same as earlier for the track, I'm going to put it down on the floor with a direction in the X and a length that is something I don't know yet. We're going to see this later. But I'm going to copy this parameter and I'm saying the same as earlier, base relative reference, but then instead of going in that direction, I want to go in a negative 0.5 times this direction, and now it's in the center again. So this is the same as what we did for the tracks. But what I want to do actually is this is actually going to be the distance between the wheels, because here at the end of the point I'm going to add some wheels. So this is the width of my track actually. So I can change this here, of course, and I can say, okay, what did I use on my rails? And here, take a look at this. Here I used 1.4. I can make it 1.4 over here, so it has the exact same values. But I don't like to have these kind of things on different places in my setup, so I'm gonna make one parameter on my train setup that is gonna drive both the tracks and this line over here. So what I'm going to do is here add a parameters interface, and I'm going to add another float. And this float, I'm going to call this, let me see, track width. So TRACKWIDTH, track width. There we go. Apply, and then I'm gonna add a range that I want this to be in. Let's say I don't want it to be any smaller than 10 centimeters, and I don't want it to be any larger than well, 10 meters. It's a lot, but still okay. And here in channels I can already make a default for it. Well, I looked this up online, and apparently pretty much everywhere in the whole world 1.435 meters is the distance between the tracks. So for normal tracks, so normal train tracks, I have to specify. So I'm going to use this for now to keep it as much as possible in real world scale. So I'm going to say accept, and now I've got this track width here. I'm going to copy parameter and say here paste relative reference on this line for the axles here, and I'm going to do the same for the rails. And for the rails, I'm going to say paste relative reference, and voila. So now if I change the track width, not only does the track change, but also this line. And this line is actually going to be our front axle. So instead of a box, I'm going to call this front axle. There we go. So now we've got a front axle. We also need a back axle, right? Because wheels in the front, wheels in the back. So I'm gonna say copy. How I do this is I'll do this again to show you, selecting it and alt dragging. I've got a copy of my geometry node here. So instead of making this front axle, I'm gonna call this back axle without the one. back axle, and now what I want to do is I want to have this one lag behind a certain distance behind the front one. How much? That depends on the size of my cabin. So I'm gonna need another parameter over here, and I'm gonna say float in the train settings, and I'm gonna call this wheelbase. So this is wheelbase. Apply, accept. So I forgot to put the ranges in. Okay, so where we were, wheelbase. Let's say it can never be less than 10 centimeters yet again, because 0 doesn't make any sense to have this small, because then they're exactly on the same position. And the max, well, 10 meter for it's a lot, but okay, let's say okay for now. And for the defaults, let's make it, let's say 3, something like that. Doesn't really matter what I put there as a default, but copy parameter, and I'm gonna say back axle. Now on this back axle, what I want, the constraints here, instead of saying follow the position on track, I want to say follow the position on track, but a little bit behind. How much behind? Wheelbase behind. So I'm gonna say minus, and then right mouse again, paste relative reference. So now it's position on track minus wheelbase. So, and voila, here we go. So now if I change position on track, it will move. Here we go. And if I say the wheelbase has to be bigger, it will lag more, or wheelbase smaller, it lags less. So now I've got my front and my back axle working as I wanted to. But now I have to make a box once more for the cabin. So I'm gonna make another box. Put it in the middle, put it between the front and the back axle, because this is where it's gonna be in my scene. It's gonna be in between the front axle and the back axle. And first of all, I'm gonna have to make it follow the curve, because now it's in here. So I was still in wireframe, not anymore. So I'm gonna select the box, say follow path. It asks me what is the path, that's this. And now I'm going to do something different, because it's going to ask me select the look at object. And what I'm going to do is I'm going to look at the back axle. So I'm going to look at the back axle and now select the look up. I do not have any look up yet, so I'm going to keep it at this. So now what's happening, if I roll over here, what it's doing, it's animating over this curve, but its orientation seems a bit off, but that is because it's always looking at this back axle that's over here. So it doesn't matter where I am, it will always look at that. And this I'm going to use this to my advantage, because what I'm going to do is with this box, I'm going to, in the constraint network, I'm going to show you this. So now we've got 2 extra nodes here. We got an object as the second input, which is the look at. That's the second input of the follow path chop node. Still the curve, but the normalized distance, we have to set it to distance from start once again. And this position here, which is still by default set to floating frame divided by the total number of frames here. I'm going to delete this one, delete channels, and I'm going to use position on track once more. So I say copy parameter over here, say here paste relative reference, and voila. So now what is happening is it is on the front axle and it's looking at the back axle. So we're getting there, but we're not there completely yet, because for now, if I make this bigger, the center is still here. And I don't want the center to be here, I want the front to be here. So I have to set this back by the size of the box. Well, the size of the box, I'm going to set that for now to the wheelbase. So I'm going to say copy parameter and say paste a relative reference. So now it's the size of this, but I want to set it back by half of this. So what I'm going to do here is I'm going to say here as well, paste relative reference, but then minus 0.5 times this, and now voila, we've got it exactly sitting in between the front axle and the back axle. No matter where my train goes, it will always be exactly between those 2 axles. This is starting to get somewhere, but I want a little bit less high, so let's say make this 40 centimeters for now, and a little bit less wide, for example like this. And I want it to be a little bit more realistic, because now the axles are exactly on the extremities of the box. This is strange as well, because I've never seen a train where the axes are completely on the outside. So I've never seen a car where the wheels are exactly the front part of the car. So I want there to be some sort of overhang on the front and a little bit of overhang on the back. And for that, we're gonna use something that we can control here as well. So yet again, edit parameters interface, and for the train settings, train settings, we're gonna we could do this in multiple ways, like everything in Houdini. But for now, what I'm gonna use here is I'm gonna use one float vector 2, and I'm gonna put this over here, and I'm gonna call this overhang, and I call this overhang. And what is happening, I'm going to put some range in here, and I'm going to say 0 is the minimum, and maximum, well, let's say a meter, that's okay. And I'm going to say apply. So what's happening now is I've got here my overhang, and I'm going to use this one, which is going to be called overhang X, and this is going to be overhang Y. I'm going to use these two values to create a little bit of overhang here and a little bit of overhang there. So let's say, for example, I'm going to put this to 0.2, for example. That means that I'm going to have to increase the size of the box here with 0.2. So that's here. So my wheelbase has to be increased with, I did not know if I copied it yet, copy parameter to the end here and say paste relative reference. So now my overhang on the front is making this bigger. But it's not really how I want it yet, but we'll get there. Bear with me for a second, because I want to have the overhang on the back as well. So I'm going to say copy parameter here, and I'm going to add this here, plus, and then say once again paste relative reference. So now I've got the wheelbase plus the overhang on the front plus the overhang on the back. Okay, so almost there. The only problem that we have now is that once I make the overhang on the front bigger, it also becomes bigger on the back, and if I make it on the back bigger, it also becomes bigger on the front. So that's not really correct, because what I want is that the center of this box has to move in such a way that when I add something to the front, it only adds to the front. So in order to do this, what I have to do here with this wheelbase is I have to say let's see, add 0.5 times this value, the front overhang, copy parameter, because I have to move it half of the overhang of the front, paste relative reference. Oh, this didn't go well. Paste relative reference, now it goes as I want. So now this is already getting a little bit better. You see on the front it goes alright, like it should, but on the back it's not yet, because in the back I have to go back here and say, well, first I'm going to copy this parameter, sorry, and then I'm going to say I'm going to have to get rid of a little bit. I'm going to move it to the back, 0.5 times the overhang on the back. So right mouse, paste relative reference, overhang Y. So now if I increase the overhang on the front, it's correct. Overhang on the back, it's correct as well. Yay, almost there. So I'm gonna put some reasonable values in here, 40 and 50 for now. That's good enough. So alright, box, I'm gonna call this cabin, and I'm gonna save this file, save as, and then fray part 2, and if I'm not mistaken, I'll leave it at that, and this will be the end of part 2, and in part 3 we're gonna continue with putting some wheels on this train. So see you in part 3.